Is South Korea a cultural powerhouse? We answer this question and more on Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Wednesday, July 30th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. Critics say South Korea is indeed a cultural powerhouse, given the popularity of K-pop, K-movies and dramas, as well as K-snacks, if you will. For more on this, I have Jin Yu Young with the New York Times here in the studio. Yu Young, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I also have Jason Bechervaise at the Office of International Affairs from Hanyang University. Jason, it's been such a long time. Welcome back.
Well, thanks for having me, Sunny. It's always great to be here to talk about K-content with you.
Right, for sure. We'll start with you, Yu Young. The animation K-pop Demon Hunters continues to make international headlines. We've covered it quite a bit here in our panel discussion as well. And today I'd like to ask you, what appears to be the focus of the foreign media coverage with regard to K-pop Demon Hunters?
Right, so the recent animated film K-pop Demon Hunters has been widely covered in international media. Actually, earlier today, the platform announced that it became Netflix's most widely watched animated film ever. So largely, the media has been covering its popularity and its catchy soundtrack, which has ranked very high on music charts like Billboard and Spotify. But at a deeper level, a lot of the international media attention has been on the film's ability to incorporate Korean elements of Korean culture to a predominantly English-speaking and global audience. By now, many people all over the world have heard about K-pop, but not many people know about its huge fan culture or the relationship between boy bands and girl bands, or the relationship between groups with differing levels of seniority. So the film really incorporated all of these aspects in a really digestible way for the global audience. On top of that, the film included many Korean elements that are not related to K-pop. For example, the film had a really cute tiger and a bird, and that might just appear like a comical duo on screen, but actually they were a really common pairing in traditional folk art called mina. And on top of that, we see very local elements of Korean culture like the look of the subways and dining culture. So much of the media coverage I've seen really highlights the film as a celebration of not only K-pop, but the South Korean culture that has helped the rise and the popularity of K-pop as we know it today. Sometimes I find it a little bit difficult to fully capture the essence of Korean culture to an English-speaking audience, but I think the movie really incorporated that really well without watering down or compromising any of the Korean values.
Right, indeed. And Jason, some claim that this particular animation, it's a genuine collaboration between East Asia and Hollywood. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting where the industry is heading. We're seeing films like Minari, Pachinko, the Apple series, and also the Netflix show Beef. And, you know, I think what works really well in those dramas, particularly Beef, is you have this kind of influence of Korean culture and Western culture, and you've got these Korean American creators who are obviously very well versed in Korean films and wider culture, but haven't been brought up in the United States or North America. They're able to tackle these themes in a way that resonates with viewers globally. And I think K-pop Demon Hunters is a further example of that. I mean, it's really interesting, you know, looking at it in terms of the mythology, the Grim Reapers. You see that a lot in K-content, right? You know, along with the gods and themes of life and death and the afterlife. And here you kind of see elements of that, but it's just done in a really different way through the prism of K-pop and fandom. And I think it just really captures the energy that the industry, you know, you can see on a daily basis how people are really behind K-pop and how it's one of the biggest drivers of the cultural industry. And I think the film captures all these different elements in a really kind of innovative, creative, lively way. And music is central to, you know, the film. And I think you've seen how music can really elevate a film, a movie or a series. And I think that's true of this particular animation as well. Without the music, the animation wouldn't work in the same way. And so you have the story, you have the music, you have the visuals, you have the themes, and I think it just comes together in a really organic way.
Right. Against this backdrop of the rave reviews behind K-pop Demon Hunters, Young, you recently published a piece for the New York Times on South Korea's standing as a cultural powerhouse. Do tell us a bit about the background behind your story first.
Sure. So for my work, I cover a really wide range of topics, from political crises like South Korea saw in December with the martial law, to the sport of bullfighting in Cheongdo, which is in the south of the peninsula. But one thing that I've always gravitated towards is South Korean culture, and not just about curtain raising these new releases, but also the impact that their success has on South Korean society. So after keeping tabs on this over the past few years, I really realized that K-culture was no longer just K-pop or K-dramas, but it came to encompass so much more. And I really wanted to put that phenomenon on paper. And while the New York Times has covered many of these topics as standalone pieces, there was nothing that really put them together in an interwoven and comprehensive story. So I spent several months talking to dozens of people in the industry and looking at many pages of reports and data to make sure I could capture this very ambitious project into something that's digestible for our international audience. And after doing months of research and interviews, I realized that there was indeed a story there about the rise of popularity of K-culture across the world. I've been really fortunate to be working as a journalist at this time where the Korean wave, which is referred to as Hallyu, has come to a point where it's spreading farther and faster than ever, but also has so much potential to grow from here.
Right. Staying with what you just said, Young, do you believe then, indeed, after your research, months of research, that global interest in Korea has indeed moved beyond its entertainment content to its broader culture?
I would definitely say at this point it's safe to say that global interest in Korea has spread beyond its entertainment to its broader culture. Experts I've spoken to in the music and film and beauty industries all say while K-pop and K-dramas were the gateway into interest to South Korean culture, the interest is now on a way larger picture. For example, people who consume Korean entertainment have really taken interest in the food that appears in the shows and the dramas and the makeup that celebrities wear. For example, Korean celebrities are really known for their youthful and fresh makeup looks, and a lot of this is attributed to their really rigorous skincare routines, often referred to figuratively and literally as a 10-step routine. So many people are looking for ways to buy and imitate this exact process. Last year, Netflix's Culinary Class Wars, which was a cooking show that pitted 100 chefs against each other, topped the platform's non-English charts for several weeks in a row. And after that, experts in the food industry say that the show caused a huge surge in the interest of K-food. People have been posting remakes of the Korean recipes that those chefs went out on the show with, and also Korean food products have been selling out in major US stores like Trader Joe's. Also, last year, author Hanyang won the nation's first Nobel Prize in Literature, which also led to an increased interest in the South Korean language. I have personally went abroad and seen many Korean language books at the forefront of the foreign language section, and also the Korean government has pushed to open more Korean language schools abroad as well. So there is still a really high interest in Korean content in the entertainment sector. I would still say that's very much considered the bread and butter of Korean culture, but it's really safe to say at this point that their success has led to an interest that goes beyond way that.
Right, and with regard to the interest in the Korean language, Jason, there have been reports about the growing interest in Korean in the West and the reportedly slowing interest in Mandarin. That being said, Jason, do you suppose this particular reality with regard to the rising interest in Korean is perhaps a tangible indication of the power of soft diplomacy, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. I think if we go back to the 1990s and look at how the culture industry was developed into the powerhouse that it is today, the Korean government, there were two administrations of Kim Yong-sam and Kim Dae-jung. They viewed the culture industry very, very differently. There was now it's been widely reported, but yeah, there was a presentation on the success of Jurassic Park, and that was a global hit in the early 1990s. And the Korean government realized the potential for, the Korean cultural industry as an industry generating revenue and also soft power. And so there was a tangible shift from trying to control the industry to try and support it. And so if we look at the developments over the last few years, we've seen the success of Parasite, you know, a Korean film winning not just an Oscar, but a Best Picture, you know, Academy Award, the most coveted prize in the world of cinema. We've seen Korean shows generate a huge amount of attention, albeit on, you know, platforms like Netflix. We've seen, you know, theatre and all aspects of the industry. We've seen K-pop, of course, you know, not only becoming a huge force, but being so popular that you're seeing American artists kind of clearly being influenced by K-pop artists. And some of the record labels in Korea, we're talking about HYBE, you know, Big Hit, you know, JYP, YG, SM, you know, these record labels or companies are some of the biggest record companies in the world. And so, you know, we see the success of something like K-pop Demon Hunters. And I think it really captures how far the Korean culture industry has come, you know, in 2 decades. And every time I think it's kind of peaked, it just, you know, hits another level, you know. So with, you know, Parasite, what can beat Parasite? Then it's Squid Game, and then you've got other things that have come since then. We've obviously got BTS and Blackpink who continue to drive you know, the K-pop industry. And I think looking back, I think government policy has played a big role in, you know, how the industry has developed over the last few years. And we might talk a little bit about some of the challenges going forwards. And I think, you know, that's where government policy can help, where, you know, the current film industry is currently at.
Right, for sure. And before we touch upon that, earlier on you spoke about the interest in K-beauty products as well as its snacks. That being said, what more can you tell us about the broader commercial impact of the Korean wave?
So the Korean wave has led to really big contributions to the South Korean economy. First off, success of shows like Squid Game led Netflix to pledge billions of dollars into South Korean creations. Also, the rise of demand in beauty and food products have led to record-level exports over the past few years. Food exports of agricultural products hit a record $2.48 billion in the first quarter of this year, which is up nearly 10% from the same time last year. Also, earlier this year, South Korea surpassed France in beauty exports and is now the world's 3rd largest beauty exporter in the world. Beauty products have been so popular overseas that people are now actually stockpiling these products before the U.S. Tariffs are set to hit on August 1st if a deal isn't reached before then. The past few years, there's been such a high demand in these beauty products that some beauty brands in South Korea are actually responding to this global demand and are creating new skin tones and formulas to be more compatible with skin tones with people all over the world and not just in South Korea. And although it might take a few months for these tariffs to actually hit consumer products if they are enacted on August 1st, we can definitely see the rise of K-culture having great impact on several fronts.
Right. Jason, do you suppose the current interest in K-culture will be short-lived, or do you see this as a lasting phenomenon?
Definitely not short-lived. I've been following Korean culture and content for 20 years, and I get asked that question all the time. And you know, I'm still here. I'm teaching about K-contents. I've got a lot of students coming to Korea to learn about the industry. You know, kind of going back to an earlier point I made, it's been developing for 2 decades now. This industry is not going away. It's turned into one of the biggest culture industries in the world, and so it's still got some way to go. And that's not to say that there are no there are not any challenges that it faces, and we talk a bit about those. But clearly, you know, there's a lot of interest, you know, in K-pop, in K-films, in K-dramas, and you know, you see that kind of manifest in, you know, the number of tourists that come into Korea, and the impact of, you know, Korean soft power. You know, I sometimes compare Korea to the UK because, you know, the UK is a small country. I'm from the UK. And it doesn't have a big population. Korea doesn't have a big population either, but it punches above its weight when it comes to culture. And you know, the UK has had a long history of, you know, investing in films and culture and the arts, and I think Korea's kind of followed that trajectory, albeit in a slightly different way. I mean, Korea's established its own studio system. It has the conglomerates that can finance its content, whereas, you know, the UK, that hasn't been possible. They're relying on American financing, but their industry, their film industry, has been booming, albeit in a very different way compared to Korea's. But both countries, though, do have really really vibrant culture industries. And as you've seen with the UK, that hasn't fizzled out, and the same thing won't happen with Korea.
Right, fingers crossed for that. Young, what would you say has been the impact of the Korean wave within national borders?
So first of all, we can visibly see the impact the Korean wave has had inside of South Korea. If you look around, there has been a lot of increased tourism to South Korea over the past few years. Last year, the nation welcomed around 16 million foreigners to the country, which was almost 50% increase from the year before that. To add to that, the number of foreigners working in South Korea, as well as the number of international students studying at South Korean universities, has also been increasing over the past few years. What's less visible, and which is also interesting, is that the South Korean wave has led to an increased level of national pride within the people who live here. For example, as Korean food becomes popular overseas, both experienced and new chefs are able to revisit traditional South Korean cuisine instead of feeling the pressure to continue to modernize the food here or the pressure to learn other cuisines. Another example is that the film industry is nurturing its own young talent in design and animation so that South Korean filmmakers can keep the talent within borders instead of always outsourcing. And this is another opportunity to showcase talent and to nurture people here from the grassroots up. Culture experts who I've spoken to said that eating Korean food, learning the language, wearing the makeup, this is all sort of what's considered cool amongst the young people abroad. I think this brings a great pride to South Koreans here, and I think that they're really stepping into it.
Right. And now then, Jason, the million-dollar question. So what are some of the hurdles that the Korean wave needs to tackle to ensure its presence in the global arena?
Yeah, big hurdles. I mean, K-pop Demon Hunters, that's a bit of a wake-up call actually for the industry, because that's not a Korean film. That's an American film. It's produced by Sony. I think they wish they put it in theaters now, but it was acquired by Netflix. And yeah, we're seeing the kind of internationalization of K content. So studios producing, American studios kind of producing content, about Korea, be it about K-pop or something else. And the thing is, the industry has proved very successful at emulating the Hollywood formula, be it the blockbusters. They basically beat Hollywood at its own game, having a local market share of 50% or more, and being able to make their own industries very successful. Whereas other industries, they've been dominated by Hollywood movies. Now what we're seeing is kind of the reversal of that, where Hollywood is kind of beating Korea at its own game. So a movie like K-pop Demon Hunters, like I said, it's for the global audience. It's full of Korean culture and about K-pop, but it's not a Korean film. And at the moment, there's not a lot of financing going on in the Korean film industry. One of the biggest studios here, CJ&M, they have 2 films this year, just 2. Some investment funds have kind of basically left the film industry altogether, looking elsewhere for investment opportunities. So investment's drying up. There are fewer films being made. And if you look at the Korean film industry in terms of admissions and comparing 2023, for example, 2024 to 2019, it's around 45% drop. Now, there was a 10% drop in France. There was 20% drop, I think, 25% drop in North America. But here it's far more pronounced. And so there are alarm bells, because Korea, for between 2012 and 2019, admissions to Korean films would hit 100 million each year. And now we're in a position where Korea is the 9th biggest film industry in the world. It's dropped 4 or 5 places. So it is a real problem. And how does the industry kind of find a way to get back to those numbers? And some are suggesting, I think, the holdbacks are an issue. In France, there's a long holdback period in which, when it's released in theatres and when it's released online, several months later, it will drop on streaming platforms. In Korea, that's not the case. And so I think the industry is having to work out where it is in post-COVID climate. It's not all bad news. Like lower budget films are doing well. You know, 3 out of the 10 or 11 films that broke even in last year were budgeted under 10 billion won, so what's that, $8 million. Personally for me, you know, the films that I got really interested in when I started exploring Korean cinema, these were the lower budget films, not, you know, these local blockbusters, although I do enjoy them. And so, you know, and the Korean Film Council, they're supporting some of these kind of medium-sized budget films, I think around about 9 of them. And so we're seeing some directors making films, like Byung Young-ju, haven't made films for a number of years. And so it's not all bad news, but the industry's in a really tough place right now. And so, you know, the Korean film industry has proved to be incredibly resilient, and it always seems to be in a crisis mode. But this is quite a difficult period it finds itself in, and I think over the next few years will dictate how, you know, the industry develops over the coming decade.
Right, definitely something to think about then. Young, moving forward then, what's perhaps another aspect of the Korean culture that can serve to captivate the global audience, do you think?
So one area that we've explored a little bit less, but it's also really captivating right now, is K-fashion and the influence of South Korean celebrities in the fashion world. We've seen many Korean celebrities become ambassadors for luxury global brands. For example, Jisoo from Blackpink is an ambassador for Dior, or Jin from BTS is an ambassador for Gucci. So we see a large presence in these luxury brands of Korean celebrities, and they're very much becoming influential in the global fashion industry. Now, on the flip side, we also see a rise of brands from Korea itself. International media outlets like Vogue have covered rising Korea brands like Arirang, Woo Young-mi, Anderson Bell, who have growing presences in the United States. Fashion platforms like Mushinsa are also offering the ability for U.S. consumers to purchase these brands overseas. And also, Mushinsa was actually the official designer for the Olympics when the athletes entered the opening and closing ceremonies. So we're also seeing the ability for Korean designers to showcase their talent on global stages like the Olympics. Also, the first season of Next in Fashion, which is a fashion designer competition show on Netflix, the first season, Min Kim actually won that season. So we see a lot of promise and talent from South Korean fashion designers here. This is a super dynamic and exciting industry, and I'm looking to see what potential that industry brings in the future.
Right, as are quite a number of people, I'm sure. All right, Young, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today. And Jason, thank you very much for your insights.
Oh, thank you for having me, as always.
Right, well, that ends this edition of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching. We return same time tomorrow with yet another session of our panel discussion.